So recently I went down to my local Apple store and returned my M1 Mac Mini, and in today's video I'm going to tell you guys why. Since the day of Apple announcing their endeavors into the CPU market, I had been both optimistic and skeptical. You see, Apple has a proven track record that when they control their products from both the hardware and the software side of things, they can make an absolutely extraordinary product. If you need any proof, just take a look at the Apple iPhone and the iPad. Now, while the iPad and iPhone are my source of optimism, they also happen to be my source of skepticism. You see, the iPhone and iPad inherently and historically have always been closed-off sandbox ecosystems because they were a new product and this is all we really knew. But when you look at something like the Macintosh computer, that's inherently and historically always been an open ecosystem. And in my mind, Apple making the switch over to Apple Silicon threatens that open ecosystem. And the other part of my skepticism actually comes from me thinking, can Apple do it? Can they get Intel-based Apple applications to run just as efficiently on the Apple ARM silicon? Now, I'm going off into this tangent because it all kind of plays into the reason why I decided to return my Mac Mini. So while this video might be inherently negative, let's at least start off by talking about some of the good or some of the things I actually liked about the M1 Mac Mini. So my M1 Mac Mini was fast, and I mean really fast, especially in applications that mattered. So here in the channel, I like to heavily focus on video editing, and that's really where the M1 Mac Mini shine. So in applications such as DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut Pro, it really tore through any type of footage. I mentioned this here on the channel in other videos, but in H.264 footage, H.265 footage, footage shot on the R5, the A7S Mark III, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, in B-RAW, it pretty much handled anything that you would throw at it. But not only was it good at video editing, but it also was good at pretty much everything else. So photo editing in applications such as Lightroom and Photoshop and Pixelmator Pro, Luminar AI, it pretty much worked flawlessly. And then in other applications or other productivity tasks like browsing the internet, launching Word, Slack, Discord, Zoom, it pretty much did everything flawlessly. And then it was also really good at doing things that people don't often talk about, such as live streaming with Zoom, OBS, or Streamlabs. In fact, I was able to hook up my Elgato Cam Link as well as an AverMedia Ultra Gamer 4K and stream 2 different streams to a single source without having any issues whatsoever. Oh, and it was also really good at gaming both locally and in the cloud. I ran a couple of Apple Arcade games locally and I got pretty solid 60 frames per second, but cloud gaming, which actually people don't really understand, does require quite a bit of GPU power, especially when running something like GeForce Now or Google Stadia. I ran both of these platforms and I saw amazing performance coming out of the VP9 codec off of this GPU. So it sounds like a great system that pretty much did everything flawlessly, so why would I return it? Well, not everything was perfect. Alright, so issue number 1, random restarts. So my M1 Mac Mini religiously restarted on me, I'd say about 2 times a day, without any explanation. I tried it with peripherals being connected to it, with nothing but just my monitor being connected to it. No matter what, it would just restart. Couldn't exactly explain it, but it was pretty bad. Issue number 2, Bluetooth connectivity. So I use an Apple Magic Keyboard, Apple Magic Mouse, and Apple Magic Trackpad. And I keep them anywhere from around 2 to maybe 5 inches at the most away from my M1 Mac Mini. And quite continuously, once again, almost religiously, just like the restarts, I would get random disconnects in my Bluetooth, and I couldn't do anything to get it to reconnect except for actually restart my system. And this would actually happen at some of the worst times where you could lose connectivity to your peripherals. Like for example, when you're on a Zoom call with your boss and something weird pops up on your screen and you just can't quite close it down. Yeah, not good. And then there were hardware compatibility issues. Now, I have a lot of microphones, but one of my favorite microphones is actually the Blue Yeti. I think it's just right over here over my shoulder. But this microphone right here, when I would connect this to my M1 Mac Mini, it actually would give me this weird audio feedback. Now, interestingly enough, this hardware compatibility issue seems to be isolated to my M1 Mac Mini, as I also had an M1 MacBook Pro that I purchased and returned, and that one didn't seem to have issues with the same microphone, so go figure. And then there have been the application compatibility issues. This is where I've actually been the most skeptical. So you have applications such as 1Password that won't launch or even install, applications such as Docker Desktop, which won't actually run, and when they did release a preview version that would actually run, it still wouldn't run all of my scripts or Docker Compose files or containers. Then there's applications such as Adobe Premiere Pro, which do actually run and launch, but the performance, even till this day, which has been updated, is absolutely abysmal. And then you have applications such as Final Cut Pro, which actually run extremely well, but I still have a ton of issues with a bunch of my plugins. Now, of course, it's gonna be up to the developers of those plugins to update them, but it's been about 2 to 3 months now, and I still don't seem to have any compatibility when it comes to Apple Silicon for some really expensive plugins, including one of my favorites, which actually happens to be Color Grading Central's Cinema. Color Grading Central's Cinema Grade. And then for a few quick notable mentions, external network adapters won't show up in your network system preferences, external hard drives or other media will not show up in your Finder or on your desktop, and then finally, when you modify your host file, those DNS changes do not reflect. So with all these problems combined, I decided to pack up my M1 Mac Mini and return it to the Apple Store for a full refund. But I will admit, the title is a little bit of clickbait because while I did return my M1 Mac Mini, I did turn around and purchase another one with a bigger hard drive, a 1TB hard drive as opposed to the 512. But this also did give me the opportunity to give the M1 Mac Mini another chance, and I will say, some of the issues actually did resolve itself. So I've only had one random restart in the last month, and I also have only had one Bluetooth disconnection. Some of the other issues, such as the hardware compatibility with the Blue Yeti, I tried it in this M1 Mac Mini, and I still have issues with it, which is kind of funky. But a lot of the other issues did kind of work itself out, and I do have some optimism when it comes to the application compatibility. For now, I still have to bounce back and forth between my Intel MacBook Pro in order to use some of my plugins, but hopefully in the really near future, those issues do get worked out soon. So the M1 Mac Mini has its own fair share of problems, and if you're in the market for any Apple Silicon device, I definitely think you should consider some of the things that I mentioned here in this video, as some of these issues are fairly widespread and you can find them on a number of forums across the internet. I do think some of the issues can be worked out via software, but others are going to require some hardware iterations until Apple gets a swing of things and can kind of work the kinks out. For now, I'm just going to keep on using my new M1 Mac Mini and hopefully keep you guys updated along the way. And that is going to wrap this video up. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Also, while you guys are down there, if you like this video, hit the like button. And if it's your first time to the channel, consider subscribing. Once again, guys, my name is Fran. Thanks for checking out this video, and I'll see you guys in my next one.